Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombeck in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombeck.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I'm Derek Dombeck, your host, and this is the podcast where we try to live our vision, love our life. And today we are sponsored by the Circle of Trust, the Real Estate Circle of Trust, which is my mastermind. You can find information about that at reicot.com. And I bring that up because our guest today, Lee Phillips, actually was a part of a mastermind in a separate group from myself, but that was where we started to get to know each other. I've also seen Lee speak many, many times, and his topic is extremely important and one that I personally feel people do incorrectly all the time. So, Lee, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. If you wouldn't mind, just let my audience know who you are, and we'll jump right in.
Well, thanks, Derek. I'm Lee Phillips. That's just me. I'm a liar. I mean, a lawyer. That's Texan for attorney. Y'all go down and see your liar, right? And like most lawyers, I'm full of it. Actually, Derek, I went and had my colonoscopy a couple of months ago. Everything turned out fine. I'm okay, but I have the clean out's horrible. Have you ever done one?
I'm trying to avoid it, so no, not yet. But I'm 48.
Clean out's
I'm
horrible.
supposed
You have to clean out, and so I get the colonoscopy. I wake up in the recovery room, and there are all these people standing around looking at me, and it actually kind of weirds me out. And finally, I realize why all these people are standing around looking at me. Do you know how rare, Derek? Do you know how rare it is to see a lawyer that's not full of shit?
Yes.
Anyway, I'm a U.S. Supreme Court counsel, U.S. Federal Tax Court attorney, and all kinds of garbage. Let's just go.
Let's just go. I love it. That's why I always enjoy our conversations, because we don't beat around the bush because you're too expensive because you're an attorney. We got to talk fast, right?
No, attorneys can't say hello in 10 minutes.
No, absolutely not. I've been around and doing this since 2003. I've been through different types of asset protection courses over the years. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I believe a lot of it is just to sell courses and LLCs and corporations and trusts and entities. But you're primarily an advocate for the LLC, correct?
Well, the LLC is a pretty cool tool that the lawyer has available today. There is a lot of misinformation on it, and the fact of the matter is the vast majority of them do not protect the person when somebody slips and falls in the rental unit. It's in an LLC. The corporate shield is supposed to protect you. Can't sue me, got to sue the corporation or the LLC, and it doesn't work. So people don't get any more tax advantage out of it. The problem is the lawyer never brings you in and says, look, you've got the LLC. This is what it is. This is how you have to use it. This is what you have to do in order to make it so that it works for you. Your accountant never brings you in, puts his arm around you and says, we need to teach you how to use your little company. We need to teach you how to use your real estate as a tax shelter. Those two, your company and your real estate, those are your two tax shelters right there. And if we can cut your taxes 20%, that's a big deal. But you've got to know how to use these tools, these legal tools. Just getting the piece of paper from the lawyer or off of Legal Doom or wherever it is, the piece of paper doesn't do you any good. You got to have a piece of paper, don't get me wrong, but you got to do a lot of other things. This whole thing is basically a scam, Derek. The federal government, Congress, gives us these tools, the LLC, the corporation, the corporate shield, and it's a carrot. They hold it out in front of you and they say, okay, little business guy, you start your business and we'll protect you. Does the federal government really want to protect you? I mean, if your delivery van hits a kid in the crosswalk and paralyzes him, does the federal government really want to protect you? No, they want you to pay for that kid. And so they give you this bait, this carrot, and say, we'll protect you. But then they put a whole lot of, oh, by the way, if, ands, buts in it. And the fact of the matter is, the lawyers, the websites, they don't teach you about the if, ands, or buts. And when I get you into court, the whole argument is, Derek, this isn't a real company. You didn't treat it like a real company. This is just your alter ego. And Your Honor, I don't have to honor this company. I don't have to honor the corporate shield. I can sue this guy directly. I can sue him personally. And the vast majority of times, the court says, yeah, that's right, sue him personally. So you've got to manage these things. You've got to keep them up. Just getting the piece of paper isn't enough. And there are even state laws. Utah has a state law. I'm licensed in Utah that says you don't have to follow formalities. You don't have to do anything for your LLC. And yet they are setting aside the corporate shield of an LLC every day in Utah all day long. The whole thing is it fair to you to have to treat this like a company and not be able to go after these guys for their individual wealth? And the answer to most of them is no, it's not fair. You can go after them personally because they didn't treat it like a real company. I'll give you an example, Derek. All the gurus say, oh, you got to put your piece of real estate into the LLC, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, how do you get it in there? Well, use a deed. Now, on a trust and stuff, I can use a quit claim deed because that's moving the piece of property from one of my front pockets to the other front pockets. I'm still in the pants. But an LLC is a unique animal. It's different. It's not you reincarnated. At least it shouldn't be. So I need to use a warranty deed. Okay, make out a warranty deed. Move it from you to LLC. No big deal. Okay. You just moved a $400,000 piece of property into this LLC. What did you get back? I mean, if you give Amazon or Walmart or anybody else $400,000, what do you want back to say that, yeah, I gave these guys $400,000?
You want the revenue. You want the proceeds.
I want a stock certificate or something, a note, something that says I gave them $400,000. Your Honor, these people put this $400,000 piece of property in there and they didn't get one thing back that says that they put $400,000. This thing's a scam, Your Honor. They know that it's just them reincarnated. I'm not going to give your LLC, Derek, a $400,000 piece of property unless I get something back that says I get a chunk of your company or I get a note or something. Your Honor, there's none of that. This thing's a scam. They know it's just them reincarnated. Let me sue them personally. Can you see the argument?
100%. And I would go as far as to say the other reasons that it's easy to pierce the corporate shield on most of them is you talk about the additional paperwork. How many people do resolutions every time they make any decisions for their entity?
Well,
Can you touch
that's
on that?
part of the formalities that we're talking about. You're absolutely right. Over the years, the courts have said, look, in order to prove that this isn't just your alter ego, you need to do this, 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 and this. And the courts have laid out, we call them formalities. The courts have laid out these formalities. So the name of the game is to get into court and say, Your Honor, I did this, 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 this. This is what you guys say I need to do in order to actually have the company and not claim it as myself. I've done all this stuff, but nobody does all of this stuff. It doesn't work. In fact, they don't even know what they need to do. So let me give you a 2-second history lesson. LLC was created in 1977 in Wyoming. It was a slow year, middle of the winter. The jackrabbits ain't running. There's nothing to do in Wyoming. So they create this thing called an LLC. Basically, what they did is they married a corporation and a partnership. So I got the corporate shield from the DNA of the daddy corporation. I got another piece of asset protection from the mommy partnership. And Derek, you just said there ain't no asset protection in a partnership. Anybody knows that? Well, there is. You don't know that there is, but there is. And we got the DNA from Daddy Corporation. We got the DNA from Mommy Partnership. So we got this asset protection too. And an LLC, the reason the LLC is popular, and most attorneys can't tell you this, the reason it's popular is because it gives you twice the asset protection of a corporation. If the attorney thinks about it, he can, yeah, okay. But they never. There's a guru running around selling a kit for LLC setup. Never mentions this other asset protection, just mentions the corporate shield. And yet I have seen more people save their butt because of this other asset protection than I have the corporate shield.
Yeah, 100%. And so let's go back to the birth of the LLC in Wyoming, and expand on that just a touch,
Okay.
because oftentimes people are like, well, I'm going to have my entity registered in Wyoming or Delaware or Nevada. And then they have to have a registered agent in the state that they've got the company formed, or I'm sorry, in the state that they're doing business in. What's your feeling on all that hocus pocus?
I can sum it up in 2 letters. The first one is B. Do you want to guess what the second one is?
I'm pretty sure we all know what the second one is.
It's an S. BS. Look, the only reason these guys want you to put it in Wyoming or Delaware or Nevada or Utah, there's a big group running around selling Utah. You can get 3 Utah LLCs for like $6,000. I live in Utah. I put my LLCs in Utah because that's where my business is. But we don't have very good laws, but it doesn't really matter, because when you buy your piece of property in Florida and you've got a Wyoming or an Ohio or any other LLC, you have to register that in Florida in order to own the piece of property. If you don't register it, I got news for you. I'm your tenant. I figure out you ain't registered in this state. I ain't paying your rent, because you can't do a thing about it. You don't have any rights in Florida. So when you register the Wyoming company in Florida, Florida has specific laws. Every state has specific laws which say you are now subject to all Florida laws. I don't care what Wyoming says. In theory, I'm supposed to use some procedural, some stuff about Wyoming. But the judges in Florida, they don't have to go to Wyoming to sue you. I got news for you. Oh, and by the way, the Wyoming LLC, it's private. I got news for you, Derek. I can tell you what brand of underwear you're wearing and how bad it stinks.
Well, that's a little bit more information than anyone needed, but
no, seriously though,
yeah.
With the systems we have today, and as long as we're on that, do you know what FinCEN is?
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
What?
I'm familiar with it, but I would venture to guess
Hey,
a lot of listeners are not. So
we
definitely
need to tell everybody this is important, guys. FinCEN is the little brother of the IRS. It's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. These guys do have guns. They're under the Treasury Department, and they've passed a law which is called the Corporate Transparency Act. It was passed in 21, and it says that it starts January 1st, 2024. Any entity that was in existence prior to that has to be registered with FinCEN this year. That's corporations, LLCs, part and limited partnerships. Anything you file with the state has to be registered with FinCEN. And they want to know all the beneficial owners. Anybody who owns 25% or more. Anybody who gets money. Anybody who can influence this company. You've got to register as a beneficial owner. I've got to upload this guy's driver's license and address and name, rank, serial number, blood type, everything else. And this has got to be done for existing entities prior to January 1st, 2024. This has got to be done during 2024. If you don't do it for every day after December 31st, 2024, it's a $500 fine plus $10,000 plus 2 years in jail. That's a heavy hit, boys. If you create a new entity this year, you have 90 days from the date you file at the state to register everything with FinCEN. And these guys are dead serious. On March 1st, Friday night, the federal court in Alabama sent down a ruling. Whole thing is unconstitutional. It's a piece of crap. It's draconian. I mean, what the judge said about this is horrible, but it's true. FinCEN came out about 3 days later and said, okay, the National Small Business Association, they sued us. We will agree that members, as of March 1st, members of the National Small Business Association, they don't have to worry about it. they're protected. It isn't constitutional for them. But all the rest of you guys, it's constitutional for you. And damn it, you're going to register or we're coming after you. So it's a big deal. Next year, you set up a new entity, you've only got 30 days. Here's the corker. I mean, let me back up for 2 seconds. If it's unconstitutional for that guy, why isn't it unconstitutional for me? Did I miss something? And next year, you've got 30 days. Here's the corker. If you have 5 guys, 5 beneficial owners, anything changes on any one of these 5 guys, a new driver's license, a new address, a new phone number, a new nothing, you've got 30 days to re-register with FinCEN. It's going to be impossible to keep this maintained. You can't do it, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sure that the first thing that this guy thinks when he gets a new driver's license, oh, I got to tell the company, they got to register with FinCEN. As a result, you screw up $500 a day plus $10,000 plus 2 years in jail. They have the ability to destroy any small company now.
And that's if you make a mistake. If you intentionally are trying to avoid registering, it's stiffer penalties, correct?
I think it's the same penalties, but they're stiff.
Yeah.
You know, they've said, well, we probably won't put you in jail unless it's intentional.
Right.
Thanks. This is, according to Lee, it's, well, we won't put you in jail if it's intentional or if we like you. But if we don't like you,
They still have the right to do it. And
they still have the right to do it. Yep.
are you aware of lawsuits that are pending now to try and reverse this?
Well, Small Business Association started their lawsuit in 2022. It takes years to go through this. No, I don't know of any legal action that's taking place right now.
Okay.
And do you want to know another corker? Here's one you don't know, Derek. They came out about 4 or 5 weeks ago and said, oh, by the way, we are putting a new rule in effect. It isn't there yet. The new rule says that you have to register every real estate transaction. Any change in ownership of your real estate, you have to register.
And that's attached to the same Corporate Transparency Act, or is that a new act?
It's just a regulation that they're putting into place. They've given up. The federal government has given up on legislation and courts. They do whatever they damn well please. I'm sorry to say that, but I believe it.
No, it's true. And honestly, I don't know, given that it's an election year, I don't know if there's anything that anybody's going to do to rock the boat.
Nobody's going to do anything. We have to register. So get that over with, get it done.
But isn't it interesting how there's very, very little discussion of this anywhere in the press? Because
there's zero discussion in the press, never seen an article on it. And in fact, most people don't know about it. That's why I'm happy to talk about it right now. I spoke to an audience last week. How many of you know FinCEN? A couple of hands go up. Nobody knew about it. And yet this thing is hanging over them like the sword of Damocles. It's, I mean, it will be crushing if they decide to come after you. Well, they'll destroy you.
100%. And the circle of people that I run with, and a lot of them are, friends of yours as well, we all discuss this. We talk about this in mastermind settings and things of that nature. But think about the small landlord that has 1 or 2 properties in one LLC, and they still have a full-time W-2 job. They're not out there seeking this information. They're not listening to this podcast.
And the problem is the accountants and the lawyers aren't going to talk to you about it, because the accountants and lawyers decided this is too big of a liability. If I take you on, I register you, I say I'm going to keep you up, I have to monitor you every 2 weeks to make sure that nobody's changed their driver's license or their address or anything else. They can't do it. So the professionals are basically saying, we ain't touching this one, baby.
And the professionals that want to do it and form LLCs can now jack their pricing.
Well, they can jack their pricing. You have to register it originally, but then they're going to turn it over to you. They may do it for you originally, but they're going to turn it over to you. They're not going to maintain it. And so, no, nobody's talking about this. And we got kind of off topic. Let's go back and talk about the LLC for a while, because it's pretty cool, even though you have to register it now. And by the way, I told you that there isn't no such thing as privacy, particularly now that FinCEN's here. They're going to share this information with the state. They've said they're going to share it with banks. So it's going to be widely disseminated information. They're going to share it with all agencies of the government. That's a new law that they put into effect. So, it's going to be all over the place, guys. I'm going to be really ticked when I start getting emails from Joe down the street because he's picked me up on FinCEN.
Yeah. So what about your feelings on trusts versus LLCs?
Trusts give you zero asset protection. Land trusts, having said that, there are dozens of different types of trusts, and there are some that do give you asset protection, but the living revocable trust that you're going to use for estate planning, zero. The land trust that you're using to hold your property in, zero. So the answer is no, they're not going to give you any asset protection. Absolutely, you need a living revocable trust to avoid probate on all the assets when you die. And your attorney will stand there, oh, probate's not too bad. We've got laws that say that it's a maximum of 1.5%, 2% of the value of the estate. Well, yeah, if the attorney doesn't ask for extra. And the attorney is always going to ask for extra, and the court's always going to give it to them. So they're still going to take advantage of the family. And it's a time when they've got the family on the ropes, and the majority of attorneys will take advantage of you. So just avoid the whole problem with a living trust. There again, you've got to know how to use it. And that's what the attorney never tells you how. I mean, my father-in-law, 1976, pays $8,500 for a living trust. That was a lot of money, boys. He got a good one, which Fortune magazine says that less than 1% of the lawyers in the United States know how to draw them properly. Not a good statistic. So he got a good one. But when I looked at it in the early 80s, it wouldn't have done him any good because the lawyer didn't teach him how to use the trust. Now you got to understand my father-in-law, he sat there and he argued with me about it. No, my lawyer, he taught me no, they never teach you how to use the trust. That way they get the big bucks for setting it up. And when the guy dies, the family comes back to him and they get the probate. You've got to learn how to use this on your own. You've got to learn how to take care of your LLC on your own. Nobody else is going to tell you about it.
And that's the same thing that's what we've done over the years is, try to, again, build that network and talk to people that have dealt with it on their own and gone through, unfortunately, some of the horror stories, learn from other people's mistakes. But it's not an exciting topic, but it's a very, very, very important topic that most of us entrepreneurs, we put off until it's way too late.
You put off the asset protection, you put off the estate planning. And the problem is, if you can see the problem, it's too late. It's over with because you can't go back and set up the LLC and transfer assets into it. We have fraudulent transfer acts, fraudulent conveyance acts, all these that says that if you can see the problem, if the problem exists, you can't then plan for it because you'd be screwing your creditors that want to come and get you. So every state, we've all passed laws which say can't do that. Let me go back to the Wyoming stuff for a minute. I said that you're subject to all of the laws in Florida. You're making your money in Florida. I don't care that Nevada doesn't have a tax. You're paying the tax in Florida, plus you're filing a tax return in Nevada saying, I don't owe anything. Plus you're paying the guy in Nevada. Exactly why are we paying this guy? What does he do for us? Zero.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get 10,000 people paying me $100 a year to do zero, that's a pretty good business.
It is.
So you're paying the tax. Privacy? I don't think so, particularly with FinCEN now. You're using Florida law. You've got to explain to me exactly why you have your Wyoming or your Utah LLC. And I'm going to tell you, you got your Utah LLC, just take your lumps, say you're sorry, I wasted my money, and do it right.
I agree. One thing that I spent a lot of time on over the years was figuring out the difference between manager-managed LLCs and member-managed LLCs. And FinCEN, I believe, is going to kind of kill all that anyways. But can you explain that as well as what's the difference between a single member and a multi-member LLC?
Well, okay. Two things there. First of all, the first question that was asked in 1977 when Wyoming created it was, how's it going to be taxed? The IRS came back and said, it sounds like a corporation to us. How do we know it's not a corporation? So the deal was that there are 4 elements of a corporation: the limited liability shield, what we call continuity of life. That's not the term of the company. That means that if one of the members, one of the owners, dies, the company continues on. Transferability, which means I can sell stock, and centralized management, which means that the officers and directors do not have to be owners of the company. And Wyoming came back and said, okay, the way we're going to tell the difference is a corporation has 4, LLC only has 2. You get to pick which 2. You're going to pick the corporate shield. Duh. That's what you want. It's the asset protection. Which one of the other 3 do you get? Well, I don't care. And you've been to the lawyer and you've said, do I want it manager managed or member managed? And the guys looked at you and said, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. Well, it does matter, you idiot. If you pick manager managed, you pick centralized management. I've got my corporate shield and I've got centralized. I got my 2. If you picked member managed, that means only an owner, a member. We don't call them stockholders. We call them members. Only a member in an LLC can manage. Well, you're not going to hire a hired gun to come in and manage your little company. You're going to do it. So you don't need manager managed. Pick member managed. So I can pick one of the other 2, transferability. I'm not going to sell stock. So you're probably going to pick the centralized management, continuity of life, I'm sorry, which means the company goes on after you die. And, okay, fine, no big deal. But if you've got 3 of these, you don't got a corporation, that requires 4. You don't got an LLC, that's 2. What have you got? Basically a partnership. I'm going to get your operating agreement when I sue you. First thing I do. And I'm going to read it. And I'm going to see which of these you've got. They're defined in your operating agreement. If you've got 3, I turn to the judge and I say, Your Honor, by definition of law, these guys do not have an LLC. They've got 3, not 2. You don't have a corporation because you don't got 4. You have a partnership. I can sue you personally. Can you see how it works?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to understand what each one of these is. And I will tell you that 90% of the lawyers don't know this little piece of history that we're just talking about. And they will say, member management, it doesn't matter, pick one. Well, it does matter, boys.
Well, and that's the part that I've always found interesting, being in Wisconsin. When I first started 20 plus years ago, I went to a local attorney and they actually set us up with a LLP instead of an LLC. It was my wife and I. And, we had some conversations and I was going through my own self-education and going to seminars. And I always found it really interesting that nobody in my local area understood what I was asking them to do. And so I stopped educating the attorneys in my local area. And I went and sought out attorneys, on a national level that I felt were more educated and had better strategies. The theory is if the local attorneys don't know how to set me up, they also don't know how to come after me. And certain things have changed in 20 plus years, but I do believe there's still so many attorneys, as you just said, they don't really necessarily know the difference.
Well, they don't, and you need to know the difference. It's not hard. It's really easy. You need to know the difference. So you ask that question. The other question you ask is, what single member or multiple member LLCs and why is that important? The corporate shield is over here. The other piece of asset protection is called the charging order protection. And what it does is it protects the assets of the company from what happens to the owners, the members. If you get sued, they can't get the assets of the company if you're sued personally. That's pretty cool. Because frankly, you've got a better chance of getting in trouble personally than you do in the company. So I want to protect the assets of the company. And that makes it so that if there's a slip and fall in one rental unit, they can get the assets of that LLC, but they can't come and get the assets of my other LLC. So this is important. And I need to give you a history lesson for 2 seconds. Okay, Derek? So me and you and Joe, we go into business. 200 years ago in England, the only type of business there was a partnership. Joe gets in trouble. He gets sued. He gets a judgment against him. They take Joe's partnership interest. That guy is now our partner. He comes in, he sells the partnership, he does whatever he wants. That's what a partner can do. And so, wait a minute. You and I lost everything we'd worked our whole life for because Joe screwed up. That's not fair. And the Brits said, yeah, that's not fair. So in 1890, they passed a law which said that when this guy got a judgment against Joe, he couldn't take his partnership interest. He had to go to court and ask for an order which charged the debt that Joe owed against the partnership. Now, you and I, we still get to do the partnership. It's still ours. They can't tell us what to do. They can't sell anything. They can't do anything. If we issue a profit, the creditor, not Joe, gets it. We still love Joe. We're not going to issue many profits. But this is called a charging order. Basically, it says that this creditor gets an economic lien against our partnership. The LLC got this piece of the DNA from the mommy partnership. So we now have a corporate shield and a charging order protection. Here's the problem. The Uniform LLC Act 2006 says that the only remedy of a creditor of a member, guy suing an owner, is to get a charging order. And this is changing. Here's why. The first big case, there was a little case in Colorado. The first big case was in Florida, Mr. Olmsted. Mr. Olmsted is a dirty dude. He embezzles tens of millions of dollars from Floridians. And they get him, they put him in jail, and they say, okay, Mr. Olmsted, all of those tens of millions are sitting over there in an LLC. Now, Mr. Olmsted's read the law. He says, screw you. You can't get to that if you sue me. I'm never going to issue a profit. I'm sitting in jail. You can't get to those assets because your only remedy is a charging order. And that's what Florida law said. So Mr. Olmsted sticks his tongue out at the Supreme Court justices in Florida, and you can't get to it. And he told the Supreme Court justices in Florida to go pound sand. There's only one problem with that. There's a lot of sand in Florida. The Supreme Court justices ain't interested in pounding sand. So they scratched their little noodle and they said, wait a minute, what's the purpose of the charging order? It isn't to protect Joe. He screwed up. We don't care about him. It's to protect Derek and Lee. Mr. Olmsted, you don't got any Derek and Lee. This is a single member LLC. Screw you. Henceforth and forever in Florida, single member LLCs don't get charging order protection. And we now have about 18 states or so that have gone along with that. And it's logical because it isn't to protect the guy in trouble, it's to protect the other partners. So in order to get the charging order protection, you need other partners in many states now. I would go ahead and get other partners in Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is a screwed up state.
Yes, it is.
It has community property law. Community property law is a remnant of Spanish law. All the other states that have community property law are down on the southwestern border where the Spanish influence was heavy, and Puerto Rico, but Wisconsin's weird. So you can't use husband and wife. Husband and wife in the community property state are one legal entity. You're going to have to put a kid on for 5% or whatever. You got to treat the kid like a real partner. He gets his 5% of the profit or loss. He gets to go to meetings, all of this stuff. But I need another partner. Even in a common law state where husband and wife are two legal entities, I would have a kid or somebody else on with.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, doesn't get talked about hardly enough, in my opinion, because so many people are living this structure. Even, very experienced real estate investors, right? They might buy a property in a trust, and then the beneficial interest of the trust is in an LLC, which I don't mind that structure. But then they'll have the beneficiary is a single member LLC. Well, it takes a little bit longer to get through that structure, but the end result is still not going to be what you want. And now with FinCEN, it really kills that model significantly.
Well, it kind of kills the model, but the model doesn't work anyway, because I'm not interested in who the beneficiary is. I'm interested in who the grantor is. The trust says that the grantor can revoke the trust. So when I sue the grantor, the guy who set up the trust, I get a judgment against him. I say, Your Honor, make him hand over the property. I don't care who the beneficiary is. If the trust has what's called the spendthrift provision, which basically says the beneficiary and their creditors can't get to the trust. It's a paragraph. That's all it is. And people come into me all the time. Oh, I have a spendthrift trust. Big deal. You got one paragraph in your trust. Tell me something else news. If the spendthrift provision is there, I don't care who the beneficiary is. If the beneficiary gets sued, they can't come and get the assets of the trust. So this concept of the LLC being the beneficiary, there's a little bit of benefit in it, but almost none, guys.
Awesome. Well, as much as we were kind of joking about this before we started the show today, you can't tell a quick story, and oftentimes people think that asset protection is not an interesting topic, but the time has flown by, and I really, really appreciate you being here and sharing it. We haven't really gotten time to talk about taxes and other things, and we may just
Taxes
have to...
are a whole nother issue. And by the way, Derek, your biggest asset protection threat is the IRS.
Mhm.
They're taking 25, 30% of everything you bring in the door. Isn't that an asset protection loss? And yet you don't have any idea how to cut your taxes. You just do what the accountant tells you to do, and he isn't going to tell you anything, because as soon as he starts to counsel you, he's liable. He's learned to keep his mouth shut.
And
so
even if
we got another 2 hours to talk about taxes someday, Derek.
Yeah, we're going to have you back on, Lee. I know that you did have a mini course that you were wanting to give the audience, which before you talk about it, you can find that at thegenerationsofwealth.com/LLC mini course. But what's in there, Lee? And by the way, we appreciate you offering that.
It's about 25 pages of how to run your LLC. That's all it is. It's straightforward. It's just information on how to use an LLC.
Well, you say that's all it is, but that's gold, because
it is gold.
99% of people do not know how to run their LLC.
There's no hidden trap in it. And I don't sell your information. Yeah, I do get your email address, but I don't sell your information or any of that crap.
And I know that because we've got a relationship and a history, and that's one of the goals for all of my guests on our show, is to bring in people that have the right morals and ethics. And even though you're an attorney, I know you have the right morals and ethics.
That's really rare.
I know. Absolutely.
You did hear about the attorney who had the farmer as a client. He needs a signature. So he goes out to the farm, and it's early in the morning, steamy coming off the grass. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And sure enough, he gets there, and the farmer's out in the middle of the cow pasture. So the attorney hops the fence in his three-piece suit, and he's trucking across the cow pasture. And he steps in this big pile. I mean, it's still warm. It's steaming. He looks down at his leg in this big pile, and he says, "Oh, my gosh, I'm melting."
Oh, I got it already. But you got to remember, I'm from farming country, so we're very familiar with that.
You've been melting many a time, huh?
I don't know about me, but other people I know, yes, for sure. Well, Lee, thank you again for coming on the show and spreading your knowledge. And for everybody else, thanks for joining us. Again, please like this, comment on this, share this, give us ratings and reviews anywhere that you find this show. Again, the LLC mini course that Lee's giving out is thegenerationsofwealth.com/LLC mini course. Show's been sponsored by REICOT.com, the REI Circle of Trust. And until the next episode, go out and live your vision, love your life. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth-building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.